Come on in. Run your file.
Barack Obama was greeted by cheering crowds on some of his overseas stops last week. Fresh off the plane yesterday stateside, he headed to the Unity Conference, a meeting of journalists of color that was in Chicago. Well, organizers actually sent out an email ahead of time asking people attending to, quote, maintain professional decorum. Well, I was there at the conference, not exactly at the speech, and Obama got a pretty loud, enthusiastic welcome anyway. So I raised the issue of objectivity with Barbara Ciara, president of the National Association of Black Journalists.
I find it interesting that this question is coming up as it relates to journalists of color when for many, many years, journalists have been respectful of people who are in high office. They certainly stand and applaud when President Bush comes into the press room, and they stand and applaud when in other venues with Mr. McCain. So I'm not quite sure why the question is arising right now. I think that there's a perception. I think it is a double standard. There's no question about it in my mind. You know, if you see a black candidate and you see other blacks in a room, all of a sudden you're family. I think that's a joke. I think that people ought to stop thinking that way. That's what makes this country so separatist to begin with, that people think we all think alike. If you look at the audience during that CNN broadcast, you'll see that there were a number of journalists who sat, did not applaud, and basically had their notebooks in hand. And there were others who did react enthusiastically or express themselves as being supporters of Obama. But guess what? They were all people of color, and they all apparently had a different reaction.
Let's talk about John McCain. You mentioned John McCain in all of this. On a news program, a Sunday news program, he said that he would be for abolishing affirmative action. In Barack Obama's speech to Unity, the journalists there, he said he called that a flip-flop by John McCain. What was the reaction from the room?
Well, basically, there was no gasp. You know, there was no audible gasp, oh my gosh, John McCain wants to roll back affirmative action. I think that the expectation of his conservative message certainly would lead you to expect that that's exactly what his position would be. I think what was the surprise was Obama's answer to that question, and that he believed in certain principles associated with affirmative action, but he never quite embraced it, saying, oh, I think let's go with affirmative action.
Out there.
He said he didn't believe in quotas, and he kind of danced around that. So I think those of us who are looking for him to be very specific on that question still are yearning for an answer there.
Okay, New York Times, Sunday Times, front page. It says black radio on Obama is left's answer to Limbaugh. And it talks about the popular black radio hosts and how they are unabashedly supportive of Barack Obama. Yet and still, Barbara, there's also a criticism that Barack Obama doesn't really go to the black media as much as he should. There's a feeling that from black media, that he will go to a mainstream person or to a Larry King before he goes to a black media person. What do you say to that?
You know, I think any smart candidate is going to play to his strengths and also understand his weaknesses. If Barack Obama's camp believes that he is fundamentally weak in one area and needs to play more to that audience, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
And also, if you already have the support in this other camp and you do less bookings with them, maybe you already have that sewed up. I think that strategically, that makes sense. I don't think that there's a deeper message in it.
Barbara Ciara, president of the National Association of Black Journalists. And Senator John McCain was also invited to speak at Unity, by the way, but he said he had his schedule conflicted with that, so he could not speak. The watchdog Media Matters has released